So guys, I got invited to do this maybe a month or two ago, and I've never done a talk like this before, and I had to really think about how I wanted to do it and what I wanted to tell people and what kind of inspirational or directed messages I wanted to give to people. And I decided I was going to not prepare anything until about 5 hours ago. I was like, you know what, fucking powerful. Minimalistic, no idea what I'm going to say on each slide, but at least it's going to give me some direction so I'm not doing what I usually do, just making shit up as I go. So I hope you can appreciate this is more effort than I've ever put into a PowerPoint presentation in my life, including all of my stories, probably accumulative. And I'm going to teach you guys exactly, I need to admonish everything like this. Exactly what it requires on a macro level, not getting into too much of the minutiae, to succeed as a poker player. Now, show of hands, who, if they're laying in bed at night, has a few daydreams or night dreams of wanting to be a professional poker player? Anyone? Yeah, people are scared to put their hands up. Just fucking shoot them out there. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. It's something that, even if it just plays on your mind every now and again, it seems like something like a dream that can't be reified because it can be so far outside of the realms of what other people say is possible. And that is what it was like for me. Like before I went to university, before I went to this university for like 11 weeks, That's right. I just said, hey, I'm gonna take a year out of my life, and if I can make it as a professional poker player, then I'll fucking do it, but I'm probably not gonna. And then I'll just go to university, and I had that kind of safety net. So I would say, like, it's not something to even be slightly worried about having just even like a distant idea of like wanting to be a professional poker player. It's something that even if there's a little part of you, it's worth exploring, because the lifestyle that you can have as a professional poker player in comparison to so many of the other jobs out there, very low effort for the amount of money you can make, and then very, very high reward in the sense of you get to choose your own hours, you have a lot of free time, you get to travel the world, you get a lot of like inspirational people around you constantly. If you play the high stakes especially, you get to be surrounded by the best of the best and brilliant minds. So I really can't underestimate how beautiful it is to be a professional poker player, but obviously if it ain't your direction to go in, ain't your direction to go in. So, my background, I started out playing poker when I was probably about 14, and I was playing like the £10 buy-ins with my friends, trying to hustle them, and sitting there getting drunk and playing with the kind of people, like one of the guys I was playing with is called Ollie, and when he was trying to work out whether he had a straight, he would literally count his cards and he'd be like, so whenever he'd get to 5, everyone would fold, and he'd be like, how did everyone know what the fuck's going on? So it was pretty unstrategic back then, but I really felt like I had some kind of, hello. I really felt like there was something about poker that resonated with me. I liked the strategy of it. I liked that there's this beautiful duality between mathematics and psychology, which I've never seen in any other game. And now looking back, that was 14 years ago, I can safely say that I've never found it in any other game. I play a lot of other games, chess, things like that. I've never found another game that's so complex and so complicated and so nuanced. And even if mathematically you couldn't make an argument for that, the fact that something so subjective as psychology is melded into the mathematics, it makes it so beautifully nuanced. So my background is, I deposited when I was about $15. I turned it into quite a few millions. I think that's a picture of me winning the Triton for something like £1.5 million. I will say that there are plenty of people that have made more money than me in poker. I am just one voice, so always don't take anyone's word as gospel. No one's a guru. There are going to be plenty of people that disagree with me on a bunch of things I'm going to say today. And I stand before you very humbly, accepting that I am just another human that is fumbling his way through life. So, I've got a list of things that I think, a list of questions that I think you want to be asking yourself about poker, but I realized that a lot of you guys won't want to be professional poker players, so I hope that it's also going to be able to take on and extrapolate it towards other things in life, whatever you want to be trying to achieve. Hello. Zero women. Oh my god. Classic poker. It's so interesting, like, this is what I've always imagined my Twitch audience to be. There's always that thing in the back of my mind that maybe there's going to be like one, but no. So I've tried to whittle it down to the questions that I felt the most important to ask yourself about what, if you want to chase this dream, if you want to find something that you really love and pursue, not just poker, but anything in life. And the first question is, why do you want to succeed? And just take fucking 15 seconds to think about it and really think whatever it is you're trying to succeed in, whether it's economics, whether it's finance, whether it's poker, whether it's photography, whether it's relationships, what is it that you actually want to chase? So a lot of people, even if you ask them that question, if you ask them that question, they'll often say something along the lines of, I want to be happy, I want freedom, I want money, or like, I want to be able to provide for my family, I want an interesting life, things like that. But when they actually interact in a day-to-day way, they will act in probably more just to do with the money thing. And I think that this is such an important question that you want to be asking yourself, like, what is it that drives me? What is it that moves me towards my goal? Because your intention is this, imagine it's like this fabric that's just integrated into your existence from every single interaction that you have with anybody in your day-to-day life. This intention of like, this is what I'm trying to achieve in life, it directs how you say something to your peers, it directs how do you say something in an interview, it directs the choices that you make after you get out of university. What is it that you truly want? And for me personally, I want to be happy, I want to be joyful, and I want to serve. Like, I want to do as much good in the world as I can, and I want to reduce as much unnecessary suffering as I can. And the reason for that is because I believe that that is not only the most selfless thing you can do, but the most selfish thing you can do. I really believe that to be selfish, the best thing you can do is to be selfless. But I understand not everyone's going to agree with that, so just, I would say, really try and understand why it is that you want to succeed, and question yourself, is that truly how I want to be interacting with the world? Money. What is your relationship with money? Take another 15 seconds, ask yourself about it. Everyone has some pretty weird and wacky and wonderful ways of dealing with money. And you come across a lot of weird relationships in the poker world. So I was pretty lucky myself. When I grew up, I was dirt poor, and I had a mother that didn't let me know I was dirt poor. And I had an Aspergic proclivity, meaning that I had pretty much zero idea of how the world was functioning around me because I was Aspergic, had Asperger's, or at least that's what they would diagnose me with. I didn't really understand what money was, I didn't understand the capitalistic landscape, I didn't really know what the fuck was going on. So I didn't develop that kind of emotional attachment to money that you find pretty much scattered throughout the whole of global societies. And that gave me such a big advantage, and this is pure luck. Like, I didn't decide where I was going to be born, unless you believe in some wacky reincarnation stuff. Shout out to that. And it meant that when I found myself in these big moments, in, let's say, a final table, and the one that just came to my mind is, like, I was playing my first ever 25k in Monte Carlo, and the buy-in was 25,000 euros. My bankroll at the time was probably about 500k, and I put way too much money into this tournament for me and my friends, and I got to the final fucking table. Like, it was a huge deal for me. The up top, something like 1.1 million euros, and everyone at the final table is really, really feeling the pressure. It's me, a bunch of pros, this one crazy whale rushing 32, man, he was fucking like 3x potting every single street and somehow just won every hand for the first 2 days. And it showed. It really showed how much people cared. And this is where I really first understood and felt how much other people cared about money, because lucky on me, I didn't give a shit. And I was like, well, if I triple my net worth or if I don't really care, so let's just fucking go. And other people, I could see it in their decisions. They were like, why did you check that back? He's a good player, what's he doing? I was like, he gives a shit. Then I'd see it in their faces when they're in a hand, like, that tell doesn't usually exist. What the fuck's his neck doing? His toes are just like slapping me in the face. What's going on? And that is a huge thing that I found for the next, say, 7 years of my career, was in every single poker player. Every single student I had a different relationship with money, and they didn't understand it because people weren't asking themselves, what is my relationship with money? So what is your relationship with money? Do you have a good relationship with money? Do you really care about it? Are you scared about losing it? Do you want it so badly that you can't quite grasp it when it's in front of you because you fumble the ball? You need to understand this about yourself, and just got it. Yes. That's fine. Ask yourself the questions on the boards. Take 15 seconds. You need to understand this about yourself, firstly because it's going to help you learn how you interact with the world. Secondly, because if you start to understand it about yourself, you can start to question and you can start to change that. So if you're the kind of person that's going to get into a high-stakes situation, huge pot, 500 big blind pot, biggest pot you've ever played, are you the kind of person that's going to freak out and overbluff and just punt off your stack? Are you the kind of person that's going to be scared of losing, so you just call anyway because you're like, well, I'm here now, I might as well see what happens? Or are you in probably the vast majority of the people where you pussy out and make the tight fold because he probably has it, even though he's a maniac that never has it? You have to know what kind of person you are so you can adjust in game. And then when you're sitting at home, you have to be like, okay, so guys, don't worry about it. You have to, and say you have like fucking 10 minutes tonight. You can genuinely sit down, meditative position, and just ask myself, like, what is the relationship I would like to have with money? Because if you know your point A, you can decide how to navigate towards your point B. And that's such an important phenomenon in poker, and I assume in other jobs as well. Do you know what thought is? Any philosophy students? No philosophy students? No? One? Yeah? What's up, bro? Do you know what thought is? Can I call on specific people?
Yeah, sure.
Do you know what thought is? Is there something that philosophy students would be eager to answer in this?
He's not talking today.
That's great. Good job. So far, so good, right? Okay. Does anyone want to give an answer? What is thought? Well, there's a lot of different ideas about what thought is. The one that I really like is the Jungian idea. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychoanalysts of history, maybe the best. Sorry for it. I think that his idea of thought was that it was this kind of external phenomenon that just kind of floated around in the ether in some metaphysical world that humans aren't aware of, and then if a human turns himself or herself, or himself in this fucking room, into an antenna at the right time, in the right place, that thought can resonate with that person and kind of they embody the thought, and then they can articulate it through words, through art, or whatever. I'm not saying that's real, but that's an interesting concept at least. So in poker, what you're doing is you're thinking. And a lot of people, they just think. They don't understand what they're doing. They're just like, yeah, I think. Yeah, that's my opinion. That's where I got mine. They don't know where their opinion came from. They don't know how they constructed their opinion. They don't know what happens to them in the last, say, 10 years of their life to get that opinion. And very often it's not a purely rational thing. So the way that I like to kind of simplify thought within poker is I like to put it into two categories. And then this is a simplification. There are people out there that will be able to articulate it better than me. I like to put it in the category of rationality and logic, and then intuition in this other category. And just a brief story: when I did my first plant medicine experience, I did some ayahuasca when I was like 21, and I was this fucking atheist, rationalist, didn't believe in fucking anything. I was just like, I need scientific evidence to believe it. I was like very, very neurotic about it, you could say. And I had this ayahuasca experience, and I was, to cut a very long story short, I was laying there and I was trying to work out whether or not I should be with my girlfriend at the time. And I was trying to like rationalize it, you know, like here's a list of pros, here's a list of cons, okay, I'll weight this one so it's 3 times more important than that, and give that a 3, give that a 1 kind of thing. And at the end I was like, you know, I honestly don't think I can do this. There's too many variables. It's a multivariate analysis that my rational brain couldn't work out. Now, laying down in a room with 30 people, eyes closed for I know the shamans could have thought I was asleep because a bunch of people were. I get a tap on my foot, and the shaman Dan standing in front of me. Shaman Dan, he's like, he gets his feather out me. Cleansing my fucking energy, I'm loving it. Don't know what's going on, but yeah. I'll take it, thanks Dan. And he goes, he looks me dead in the eye and he goes, Charlie, you are a very, very smart young man, but you are young. You must learn not to only think with your head, but think with your heart. And I was like, it's a fucking weird coincidence, I was just thinking about that. What's going on there? And I would like to say I replied in kind of like calm and suave way, but all I got was like a little squeak of, what? I was like, don't worry about it. And he just walks off to another guy, looks back and says, you know what I mean. And I was like, yeah, I fucking do know what you mean, exactly. And I lay down and I felt, okay, imagine a world where I want to be with my girlfriend, where I'm with my girlfriend, sorry. And I was like, oh, this feels kind of nice. And then I was like, okay, imagine a world where I don't want to be where I'm not with my girlfriend. I was like, oh, that feels a bit worse. I was like, oh, I actually feel like I've made this, I actually feel like I've made this decision. I feel like my heart has decided for me. And you don't have to say it's your heart if you don't believe in these kind of phenomena, but you can say it's something beyond rationality. And that's the idea that I like to teach, is that intuition goes to places beyond rationality. Rationality is very good at precision, dissecting, looking at the minutiae, 1 + 1 is 2, etc. But when it comes to a multivariate analysis like something in poker, okay, he's check raising me on the turn, I think this is his range, this is my perceived range. He's got this tail going on, which I think weighs at like maybe 20 to 30%. We've got these kind of table dynamics, I've got this ITM pressure. There's no way a rational mind can possibly make that decision by itself. This is where you need to rely on intuition, and this is where you need to understand the limitations of your rationality so you can put away these stupid thoughts that people have like, oh, I've got a blocker, so I need to make this fucking decision. Put that aside and feel. Trust your intuition. It's not always going to get it right, because cultivating and fine-tuning your intuition is tough, but it's the best shot you have of making a good decision in poker and a good decision in other things in life as well. What is your relationship with your body? To those that are late, we'll take 15 seconds and genuinely think about it just for a second. Like, what is your relationship with your body? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your head? I'm going to pick on people now. So Ashley, come up with an answer. The Asian guy, 3 from the back, 3 from the front. Yeah, what's up?
Okay, most of the time I try to control my body with my mind, but sometimes with some irrational thought, you can't control it.
Mm. So you like to be a kind of mind over matter kind of dude? What's your name, brother?
Oscar.
That's good. Yeah, that's great. I'll go for one more. Let's go for no.
Yeah, I guess similar to that. It's not like, you know, like I'd be kind of flinging my limbs about otherwise if I couldn't control myself. But yeah, it's a means by which to perform action.
Yeah. How well do you look after your body?
I eat like shit. Go through series of wanting to go to and that all comes down the wayside.
Yeah. I mean, and when I assume your age, like 20, 21, 19, 23, yeah, same. I was eating like shit as well. So I feel you, but the classic saying is you are what you eat. You are literally, if you're eating like shit, your brain is made out of shit.
Is that my takeaway?
And if you're not exercising, then you're not allowing your brain to be functioning the best way it can. I'm sure there have been studies on it, I've not looked it up, but I bet the IQ differential between people, like if they don't exercise, sleep well, and eat well, in comparison to if they do, it's just got to be absolutely huge. So, have some water. So, to eat well, which is way fucking harder than it sounds, because no matter which scientist you speak to, which nutritionist or holistic medicine expert you speak to, they all disagree. And your body is unique, and it can actually be one of the most interesting adventures that you could ever have, is how can I make my body function in the most optimal way? How can I do a little scientific experiment every day and fine-tune what it is that makes me function in the way that's going to help me achieve my goals in life, whatever those goals might be. So you can wake up every day, okay, what's it feel like if I do some stretching in the morning? Isolate the variable. Just change that. Do 5 minutes of stretching. See if you notice a difference over a week or over a day if you're eating. Now, take another variable. Okay, what happens if I have a smoothie in the morning? All right, what happens if I sing in the morning? What happens if I sleep maybe until 5 a.m. instead of 9 a.m.? Or I guess for you guys probably fucking midday or whatever. And explore it. And I can't, and I'm sure you fucking hear this all the time from people on Instagram saying this shit, but I can't understate how important it is if you want to succeed in anything you do. The edges in life are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The edges in poker are getting smaller and smaller. People are getting really fucking good at what they do. The difference is, some people, they're going to be on their A game all the time. Some people, they're going to be on their A game 20% of the time, and then the other 80%, they're going to be floating between B and Z, and they're going to be hunting in so many spots, life and poker, that the A game people aren't. And the difference is how well you treat your body, and some other stuff as well that we're hopefully going to cover. 15 seconds, ask yourself, I'm going to pick on people.
Makes sense.
All right, hippie terminology. You look spiritual.
I kind of don't really do spirituality. I don't know.
It is, man. It's screwing me up. You know, it's
I
not
don't know. Just like I don't know, like complete waste of time.
Really? Oh, that's gonna. I'm gonna have to rip into you just for a second, man. But let's get one under on. So let's go. Yeah.
Your belief system, your sets of things you believe in, and how it relates holistically to the world.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a good one. Probably better than one I'm gonna give. So you can ask a lot of people what spirituality means, and I understand poker players, they hear that word and they're like, does that mean sitting around in a circle singing fucking kumbaya? Yeah. Some of the most rational, probably the most rational people I know are also the most spiritual people I know. And there's a reason that they can explore their intellect so deeply, and it's because they are deeply spiritual. So I'll give a definition of spirituality, and I'll tell you why it's very important. Not a hippie, even though. The definition that I could vaguely give would be, spirituality would be the exploration and understanding of oneself, and the exploration and understanding of the universe. Now, you can have people that don't call themselves spiritual, but under that definition, they would be considered spiritual. So obviously, you can take like a Stephen Hawking, or you can take Richard Dawkins. You could say they're exploring the universe in a really deep way, and it's like, yeah, they for sure are with the intellect, but probably not so much with the intuition, and probably not so much exploring themselves, judging by the way that they tend to present themselves. So, bro. And spirituality for me is not something that I ever thought I would get into. Like when I was your guys' age, like I said, I was super fucking atheist. I really, if I heard that word, I'd just kind of laugh and be like, yeah, alright, whatever. But maybe the last 5 years of my life, and actually super shout out to Hannah for getting me really, really deeply into things like meditation and understanding my emotions and understanding what was going on in my mind and my body in a really deep way that I previously didn't actually think was possible. It has changed my life so many times I can't even count. If you look at who I was 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, every single year I'm a completely different person. And it's because of, well, you can call it spirituality, you can call it self-development and exploration of the universe, whatever it is. It's really important to just understand yourself. And whether you like it or not, poker is a spiritual game. Poker, if you want to succeed and you want to improve, shout out to the chips, brother. Can I get 3?
Sure. I have more.
If you want to succeed at poker, and if you want to play poker, as I'm sure a lot of you know, you're going to have to sit in front of a computer or at a table 6, 8, 10, 12 hours sessions. You got to fucking grind. Now, what's going to happen in those, let's say 10 hours? You're going to face yourself. You're going to face your emotions. You're going to face your body. You're going to get fatigue. You're going to face tilt. You're going to face anxiety. You're going to face ego. And if you don't understand that you're the kind of person that you get 3-bet 3 times in a row by somebody with an aggressive looking avatar, and you start getting really pissed off by that, if you don't understand that's you, you're going to punt. Because you're not going to know, oh fuck, I want to 4-bet this fucking like king 3 suited because I feel like it. You don't know why you feel like it. If you don't know that you're the kind of person that when you lose a big pot, you lose belief in yourself, you're going to punt. You're going to tighten up. You're going to stop pulling those big bluffs. And this doesn't happen just one hand at a time. I've seen, and I've taught dozens of students, if not hundreds, I've seen this happen to people for months or even years at a time, where they lose belief in themselves and their graph does a fucking bridge, cliff dive. It's insane the amount of efficacy and the amount of value you can get from just understanding your emotional proclivities and understanding the world around you. Like understanding how do emotions work? How do triggers work? How does trauma work? Because I guarantee you're all traumatized if you know it or not. You have mild traumas or severe traumas, somebody didn't hug you enough, someone rejected you at school, and you're so young that unless we got the next Jesus amongst us, you're not going to be aware of it. I don't know anybody who is fully aware of all of their trauma, apart from maybe like the dad. So it's important. If you want to succeed in poker, I can only speak about as an expert about poker, but it's really important to understand yourself. And you can call it spirituality or you can call it something else. But if you ask a lot of the most spiritual people in the world, the yogis, this is the kind of definition they'll give. And they'll say that spirituality is flimsy without rationality. You think highly of yourself. In fact, rate it out of 10. How highly do you think of yourself? And I don't mean narcissistically. I mean, how much do you love yourself? How much do you appreciate yourself? Out of 10. 10? No way. Out of 10.
It varies. I think I go through you go through cycles where you get very confident in yourself, you're liking it a lot. Then maybe you fall off the bandwagon, you go to too many parties, eat too many takeaways, you start to not hate yourself a little bit more. And then, it's like, so maybe averaging like a 7, but maybe it depends.
Like you hit 9 sometimes and then you hit 4 after the night out or whatever.
Oh, definitely. Tomorrow morning, yeah.
Cool. So, a lot of people, if you ask them this question, they'll give an answer. And they'll give kind of an answer that's very surface for them and what they think. And they won't actually understand how highly they think of themselves. If you ask a sociopath, and I'm distinguishing between sociopath and psychopath as somebody who is traumatized, say around the age of 10, and develops a defense mechanism which caused them to have very low empathy. Give a different definition if you want. If you ask a sociopath how much they value themselves or what they think of themselves out of 10, they'll very often say 10, 9.5, whatever. Just saying. And the actual answer is it's nearer a 2. And the reason for that is that they've created these defense mechanisms, and it's especially prevalent in men. Well, they'll have trauma as a kid, and they'll have trauma as a teen, something shitty will happen to them, they'll get rejected for whatever it is, they'll disconnect from their emotions, and they'll not feel the shame, the guilt, the anxiety, because their body is what the psychological world calls intellectualization. And the spiritual world would say it's you haven't embodied your emotions. It's a very, very common phenomenon. It happened to me to the extreme when I was a kid. So when I was a teenager, you could have told me I was going to die the next day, and I wouldn't have felt a thing. And everyone here is on that spectrum of fully embodied with their emotions to completely disconnected from their emotions. And actually, people are not very good at determining where they're on that spectrum, because like, how are you meant to compare? You only have your own experience to go. And the only reason I can speak about this is because I've kind of gone from one to the other. So, how highly do you think of yourself is actually a very complicated question. You gave a nuanced answer, as you should. It's a very, very complicated question. And what I really try to teach my students, what I really try and enforce in their minds, is how important it is to think highly of yourself. And that doesn't mean have your head in the clouds. That doesn't mean I'm the fucking best no matter what. It means I'm gonna put my belief in myself. I think I'm here, I think I can get here. I'm at this level of poker, I can move up stakes. I think I can beat this person. I think I can get a bankroll that is gonna be this big by this year. Now you can set a goal when you're feeling shit about yourself and be like, well, maybe I'll get to like 10K by the end of the year when you're on like fucking 8K at the beginning. Or you can feel great about yourself and say, you know what, fuck it, I think I can get to 50. And obviously, rationality has to play a part. But this feeling will be part of every single interaction, just like intention will. The intention of what you want to achieve in your life, this feeling will be part of every single interaction that you ever have. When you introduce yourself at a party, if you feel good about yourself, other people pick up on that, they enjoy being around you more, on average. If you go to an interview that I'm sure a lot of you are about to go to, if you feel good, if you feel confident, every single words that you articulate will have that essence in it. That I feel good about myself and I feel like I can do what I'm here to do. And that will translate into everything that you do. Because people will feel that, they'll treat you as somebody that feels good about yourself. Every single interaction you ever have will be different if you can make yourself feel great about who you are. And that doesn't mean just accepting yourself. It just means loving yourself, feeling that you're valuable no matter who you are, no matter where you're at. Because every human is beautiful if you look through the right lens. And it sounds pretty cliche and hippie, but it's unbelievably important. Are you grounded in reality? Ask yourself 15 seconds. Don't worry about it. 15 seconds. Question on the board. Are you actually on you? You can answer straight away. Are you grounded in reality?
Maybe not right now.
Good at time management. So on the flip side of people that really have low belief in themselves, you find the people that are kind of on the other side of the spectrum, but not really. You would think that they're on the other side of the spectrum because they say that they feel amazing about themselves, so I have no idea if you know this or not. But they're actually inflating their own sense of worth, their own ego, whatever you want to call it, because inside they have insecurities, they have people that haven't spoken positively about them as they were young, something along those lines that's made them want to push their energy out and say, I'm the best, I'm going to prove myself, I'm going to take everyone else on. I've seen so many poker students that have amazing talent, and they feel great about themselves and they're playing and they crush and they always have the animalistic urge to crush people, which by the way is one of the most important things that you can ever have as a poker player, is the animalistic beast inside of you that wants to take someone else's soul out of their body and just squeeze it for every single penny they have. It's a sociopathic game in a sense, but it's important. But then those kind of people very often, they'll say, okay, I've had a huge upswing over the last year. I've binked these couple of tournaments. I think I might be the best. I think we've done it. I think we're number one. And then they'll play the high stakes and the high stakes. And you see it when you're playing, say, like a 100K tournament. There's that guy that used to play 5-10 a few months ago. You're like, good for him. Was it Bitcoin or did he bink? You're like Googling it. He binked. That's good. Maybe it's bad rather than Bitcoin money. And you see it in the way that they play. And their ego gets out of control day one. And that's exactly what happened to me when I first started playing high stakes. First 10K I ever played, it was a disaster. I opened mid-position king 3 suited, bought in 3 bets. I'm like, fuck you, 4 bet, because they're probably picking on me, because they think I ain't shit, but I am shit. And then they'd shove, and I was like, fuck, maybe they had a read. I opened queen 8 suited mid-position, like next hands, somebody in the small blind 3 bets. I'm like, fuck it, this is a great combo, why not? Let's go with it. 4 bet, they shove, I'm like, fuck, man, they just always know it, or they have it, I don't know what's going on. And I just keep trying to battle people that just fucking have it, because people just have it in poker. And the reason that I couldn't let it go is because my ego had been so inflated by crushing all the lower stakes that when I got to the high stakes, I was like, I want to be the best, I want to prove that I'm the best. Don't worry about it, question on the board. And it really bit me in the ass. And I've seen so many people, not just in poker, in life in general, get their ego inflated and crash down to reality in a really brutal way. So ask yourself, ask your friends, ask people around you, I think I'm this good at something. Do you agree? Ask people that have your best interests at heart and have a really tough conversation with yourself, because, and it's not in my best financial interest to ever say this, but I say it all the time, not everyone's good enough to be a professional poker player, not everyone's talented enough, not everyone has the right emotional makeup. There's a lot of different factors that are very often outside of people's control that go into whether you can be a successful poker player, and I'm sure that is true in many other industries. And you have to be honest with yourself, am I good enough at doing this? And often the answer is going to be no. But when the answer is yes, you have to fucking know it, and you have to be solid in your belief of yourself, and you have to not have your ability to appreciate your own talent to be wobbled by other people's opinions of you. Does your thought process have a concise structure when needed? So, answer this question from a poker perspective first. Who's our budding, either professional, semi-professional? It was you? Okay, let's go with you then.
It depends. Online, yes. Live, yeah, it's kind of all over the place when I'm playing live, but online, yeah, it's quite concise.
That was a really nice and honest answer, I think. Yeah, so that actually happened to me the first time I played live. I've been crushing online for ages, and first hand I played, I got to the river, and I was like, I'll check back my pair, and everyone was like, you got a straight, bro. I was meant to crush. And I see this, and this is probably the number one thing that stops people from being good poker players when they have talent already. So lack of talent is probably number one, but the number two I'd say, or once you've kind of selected for that, the number one, is people have a really fucking messy thought process. Now, I was obsessed as a kid because I was this rationalist, atheist kind of person. I was obsessed with kind of trying to fine-tune my intellect and trying to really understand, like, what is the most important thing I can be thinking at this moment? Because I can only be thinking really one thing, and that's I'm kind of like floating around a few ideas, but it's really just like your thoughts, your intellect, like one thing at a time. So when you're zooming in, what are you zooming in on? And in poker, people are fucked up. They're really, really, really messy, because they'll be watching say this one YouTuber and this other YouTuber and this other TV show, and they'll have heard this from their friends, so they get to a turn and I'll be like, hey, why did you bet the size? And they're like, well, I'm at the bottom of my range, this is a great board for me, I've got this unblocker, I've got this frequency, I didn't feel like he was going to be this kind of player. It's like, dude, it's an obvious bet, like, what do you think he has? And they're like, oh yeah, he's check called flop, so he probably has like some like weak top pairs or like second pairs and maybe some flush draws. So like, okay. So what are you going to do about that? You'd be like, well, I guess I could try and fold him off the second pairs and the flush draws because I've still got some equity by barreling the turn. It's like, yeah, exactly. Just slow down. Just take some time to appreciate. Just come on. And often you have to do this to people, like when you coach them, they're like, fucking come on, take a deep breath and simplify what it is that you're thinking. Because, and I'm sure again this happens in loads of other phenomena as well, because people never teach other people how to structure a thought process. Now in poker, again, the thing that I'm an expert in is the thought process that I always say to other people is, number one, what is your opponent's range? So what is the range of hands that your opponent can possibly have? Number two, what are you going to do about it? Now, number one's pretty tricky to answer sometimes, especially if you're playing against a maniac, but very often you can get somewhat of a concise answer. Number two, what are you going to do about it? That depends on all of the other factors, like how does your hand play in this kind of spot, like what does this do? And then that's where you have to break down another sub-thought process. But by having that slowed down lack of mess, by not thinking about blockers all the time and frequency, I don't know if you've watched any of the footage recently of the WSOP, or like the high stakes and live at the bike, stuff like that. All the commentators speak about is like, oh, he's got that blocker, he's probably going to fault that blocker. And it's a fucking shit show. It's an absolute mess, because they'll be in a situation where the guy's just like never bluffing because he's no MC, like, or Matt Coffey, where he's just like always got a good hand. And they'll be talking about unblocking a fucking flush draw that he shouldn't even have in his range. But they're so obsessed about this one little piece of information. Or they'll be really obsessed about board texture, so they're like, I have to use this size in this kind of spot. And it's forgetting the important things of the game. You have a hand, they have a range of hands, we don't know what their hand is. So what is their range, and what are you going to do about it? What is your perceived range is also in there. Now, don't care about what your actual range is, because a lot of people will tell you, you know, if you're playing like 2NL or 1-1 at the casino, they'll be like, well, you have to have this in your check that range. Complete bollocks. Nobody's going to exploit you in the 1-1 or the 1-2. Nobody's going to be able to, come at you in the same spot, because you're never even going to have the same spot. And even if you did, they're not going to be good enough at poker to be able to exploit it. So what is your perceived range? That's the important thing. What do they think you might have? And then what are you going to do about it? So slow it down, get rid of the mess, and you'll be ahead of even 60% of the actual professional poker players out there. How carefully do you select your social circles? I imagine it's going to be pretty terrible at university, but I've got some hope in some people. Take 15 seconds. See if I can see something that I think will be careful. I think you're going to be careful about your social circles. How careful are you? No, great. Hi. Oh, fucking not speaking, man. Who else is going to be careful? Okay, other group. Yeah.
Very carefully.
How would you go about picking who you spend time with? Yes, sorry.
Well, it's not very rational. Like, you just have to like the person and see what about them makes you feel good about being with them.
You have a nice voice, by the way. I think you'd be a good singer. I think you'd be like very resonant. Do you sing?
No, I don't.
So, when I was younger, it turned out, I didn't know at the time, but it turned out because I got bullied as a kid and I had fucking 0 friends, I tried to just make as many friends as possible. I got to university, I was at school, and I was just trying to surround myself with everyone. Because if other people liked me, then I felt better about myself. I didn't know this, I didn't know that was what was going on. But I wasn't selective because I was in a sense desperate, even though I didn't feel it. And other than that, if I were to pick a close friend, I'd often pick them on how interesting they were. If I were to pick a partner, attractiveness was a thing, but it would also be like, you know, I was into the crazy ones. You know, I was into the ones that would give me an interesting experience. You know, I was into the ones that would be able to challenge me intellectually, because that's what I looked for in a person. And something that's a very common occurrence across like the spiritual community, or people that at least speak about these kind of things, is that the more you progress spiritually, and by that I just mean the more you understand about yourself, the more you heal yourself, the more you understand about the world through all these different lenses that you're trying to get rid of because of your trauma being selective, the more you realize that a lot of the people in your life aren't serving you anymore. And it's like this birth and this death and rebirth cycle. It's like phoenix out of the ashes. You shed a layer of yourself, and then you have to rebuild yourself. And when you rebuild yourself, you're like, whoa, everything feels different. I'm not who I was before. And suddenly hanging out with this person makes me feel like shit. Let's say, you know, you have somebody who you invite out to parties and he treats everyone like crap and like punches a few people in the face, but you keep him around because he's funny. Well, suddenly after you've healed yourself and you're like, wait, why would I let someone treat me like that? That's going to impact me for the rest of my life. That's going to impact every single interaction I have at this party and probably afterwards, because I've allowed someone to treat me like that. Or if you get a girlfriend and she screams at you because you have the toilet seat down, or you looked wrong at the toilet seat down, or you looked wrong at another girl on a bus, and she just fucking yells at you and she's toxic. You're like, well, she's hot, might as well just keep her around, why not? Yeah, Beach University. It is something that people do before they grow up. They're not selective with whom they choose to be around. And when you mature, you'll hear people say, whether they're in the spiritual circles or not, they're selective. And it's like the classic thing of like, you are the total sum of the people, the 5 closest people around you. That's complete bollocks. But it's like, imagine if that were true, extrapolate the concept and say like, okay, how are the people around me affecting me? Do they believe in me? Do they want what's best for me? Are they genuinely happy when I'm happy? Are they genuinely sorry or sad when I'm sad? If they do something wrong, will they apologize? Are they honest to me? And in poker, are they motivated? You know, it was irreplaceable. When I was maybe like 2 years into my poker career, I found a guy called Ben Heath. He also went to this university. Shout out to Ben. He just came second in 250K. When he and I met, we'd been speaking online and just talking poker. I actually thought he was an Indian dude. Really surprised when I met him. And he was really, really motivated to get good. He was playing like fucking $5 buy-ins, $10 buy-ins. But I banked the Sunday Million for like 200K. And I said, well, if I have a big tournament, I'm going to be taking all of my friends to Amsterdam. So I did it. I took like 17 of my friends to Amsterdam, including close friends from home, but also including people I've been speaking to online. Ben turns up, not Indian, weird. Just had an image in my head before. And we get on like a house on fire. We are just best friends from day one, and we move in together really, really quickly. And I watched him, and it's one of the most beautiful experiences I have in my memory bank, is watching him go from a 10-0 player who's like scared to lose a $20 pot and just like fucking literally smacking his knee. It was like super into martial arts, so really punched his knee really hard when he lost a big pot, or he got sucked out on, to somebody who would make a joke when he busts a 100K tournament. Or if he, you know, goes on like a 500K downswing, he's like, oh, fuck it, what are you gonna do, crypto? And his friendship changed me. It changed me in life, and it changed me in poker. And he and I had this attitude where whatever happens, we were going to get better and better and better. And whatever happens, no matter how tragic it was, we were going to make a joke out of it. So I'd get out of busting like the one drop where I'd punted like a sixth of my roll, not realizing it was a turbo tournament, and then come out and I'm like, I think I punted. And he'd be like, ah, you fucking idiot. And I'd be like, yeah, I am a fucking idiot. That's a good one. Instead of someone like, oh, you okay? It was life-changing to have somebody that believed in me. He'd always say how good I was at what I was good at, but it also challenged me when he thought that I was talking shit. And if you can find the right people to celebrate life with, or if you can find the right grind group, if you can find the right people to speak hands with that aren't going to be too arrogant, or egotistical, or down on themselves, whatever it is life-changing. And that's what I try to tell people is like, if I can't coach you one-on-one, or if you can't be in my coaching group, find like-minded people, gravitate towards them and grow together. And turn yourself into somebody that other people are going to want to be with as well. Do you hold opinions that aren't based in reality? I guess it sounds like a yes or no question. Let's go for it. Yes or no? Yeah?
Yes.
Alright. Hands up, yes. Hands up, no. Got one no, got a few no's. Okay. All you knows, much love to you guys, delusional. Everyone has opinions that aren't based in reality, me included. There are so many opinions that we have, so many beliefs that we have that we think are based in rationality that later we'll find are not. We have so many ideas about how the world works, about how politics works, about what money is. The world's so fucking complicated, of course we're going to be delusional, we're stupid humans. We see like 3 of the however many dimensions there are, and we see a tiny proportion of that little sector. Of course we're all delusional. So one thing that I think is extremely important in poker is recognizing the sensation of being delusional. And this is something that has swept across the poker world recently, and I know you guys, at least a few of you will know that I speak about the GTO side of poker in sometimes a very critical way. It's obviously there's some importance to it, but it can be very overstated to the point of the example that I gave before, where you have somebody making a decision on a final table, their biggest decision of their life, and they're using a blocker that changes the EV by like 0.3% to make that decision when there are like 10 other variables that are absolutely so important to be thinking about. That is a delusional mindset. That's one of many, many delusional mindsets. Now, I'm going to have loads of delusional mindsets as well. You're all going to have loads of delusional mindsets when you play poker. We all are. Poker's so complicated the human brain cannot comprehend it. But, as in like comprehend the actual strategy and the nuances and the macros as well. But what we can do is learn to recognize our delusions. So when you're going into a situation, whether it's a poker hand or something in life, debate or whatever, watch yourself. Watch yourself like you don't know yourself, like you're an onlooker, and say, why did I say that? Like I just snap fucking said that in that argument with this girl. Like, why did I say that? I don't know where I got this opinion from. And understand that that probably came from some kind of grudge, or that came from some kind of like, maybe your dad told you something about women when you were a kid, and like, that kind of stuck with me and I didn't realize. There are going to be so many phenomena, and in poker specifically, you're going to have so many ideas of how poker works that are just going to be wrong. It's going to be a hypothesis or a theory that you have about how the game works or how to play hands, and you have to appreciate what it feels like when that just isn't true, when that isn't based in an objective reality. So understand the sensation of delusion, familiarize yourself with it, don't judge yourself for it, but learn to change it. And it's one of the hardest things for people to swallow when they have a big ego, is being wrong about stuff or having any delusions. So try to be the person that isn't sticking to their guns in everything that they do, because they're not going to be the people that grow. Did you ever learn how to breathe properly? Give me 5 seconds for this one. It's easy. So, in university, what did you learn first? Did you learn how to breathe, or did you learn Pythagoras' theorem? Anyone? Anyone? Or in high school? Did you learn Pythagoras' theorem or breathing? That's great. Exactly. You learn so many things that, I mean, you might use them, I don't know if you're going to use them in your future, but so many other things that are just completely useless. But something you never learn is how to breathe. Now, if you go to a lot of Eastern countries or African countries, or if you're part of like a Native American tribe, you learn this from age fucking like 2. Well, sit you down, you'd be like, try breathing through your nose, try breathing like this, try breathing like that, and you'll notice the different physiological sensations that come from different types of breathing. Now, this is going to be a short slide because I know a lot of people aren't going to be sold on meditation. If you're already interested, you probably already agree, and if you're not, you're probably not going to agree. But if you're on the fence, try it out. Try experimenting with conscious breathing. Try finding breathwork techniques online. Try finding meditative teachers online, guided meditations. It changed my life. I can't imagine a life without meditation. If there's anything in the world that's changed my life the most, it might be meditation, because every single interaction I have is grounded by 10 different techniques that I have every morning. I wake up and I do a mantra, I sing the same Tibetan thing again and again and again, and that stays with me the rest of the day, and I fucking notice it when I don't. I can invest 5 minutes, and I'm shit at meditation in comparison to some people. Like, I suck at it. My head goes off into other places, I don't have the technique, my spine's probably all crooked, but I can dedicate 5 minutes of my morning to breathing and thinking and putting my feet in grass, and it changes my productivity levels for the whole day. It's such a powerful investment of time that you are literally taking a lighter and setting fire to a whole chunk of money every single time you play poker if you're not meditating for 5 minutes beforehand. And for some reason, no matter how much I say this, and even if people agree, they're still so reluctant to do it, because meditation forces people to look at themselves and experience themselves, stop distracting themselves on TikTok, whatever the hell people are doing these days. It's tough, but it's worth it. It's super worth it. Do you ever get obsessed with short-term results? Take 15 seconds and consider it. Thanks for the chips, Sasha. This is actually super nice. Really relaxing. Chip man. What's your answer?
Yeah, just my son's up. I mean, I try to avoid it, but it's difficult not to allow it to impact your mood, I suppose. But I try.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel great when I win horrible moments.
So there's two elements I want to speak about from this. First of all, decision making. When I first got into poker, I was lucky enough to get into it with my best friend Matthew, and he and I were playing the sit and goes, like the $1 sit and goes, or the $1.50 sit and goes, 9max, and we had long walks and long conversations. Okay, if we're gonna take this motherfucker seriously, and we loved poker and gambling and everything to do with like Vegas since we were kids, we're like, okay, now we found something we're actually good at, we can actually make money, we don't have to do card counting, risk getting beaten up in casinos like the films tell us it's gonna happen. Let's take this motherfucker seriously. How are we gonna structure the next year of our life to maximize the chance that we're gonna be successful poker players? Now, I remember we had this one very specific conversation. Are we gonna play tournaments and sit and goes, or are we gonna play cash games? And it was a long conversation. It was a tough one because tournaments are higher EV. You make more money in a short amount of time if you play sit and goes and tournaments. It's very fucking tempting. But we decided cash games. And the reason for that is because in cash games, you get to see flops, you get to see turns, you get to see rivers, 100 big blinds, 200 big blinds deep. You get all of these decisions, and the earlier you get to see these decisions over and over and over again, the better. Because if you learn something early on, you have it for the rest of your career. Whereas if you make a little bit of money early on, that doesn't really affect the rest of your career at all. So this is obviously, you can extrapolate this into other areas of life. Are you spending your time learning, or are you spending your time chasing that little burst of dopamine that's, why is he not speaking?
You did tell me.
You couldn't tell me?
Yeah, you could tell me.
Can you not in text? It's a really strange thing. You have great energy, by the way, dude. Yeah, I can say that. Happy dude. What's it talking about? If you're obsessed with chasing that short-term dopaminergic boost to your brain, you're not going to get very far. It's like the classic psychology experiment they did to kids, where it's like they tested, they said, okay, either have a marshmallow now or wait 5 minutes, and you get 5 marshmallows. And they tracked it, the ones that waited and got 5 marshmallows, they were the ones that did better in life because they knew that it was important to not just chase the short term. The same is true in poker. Are you just trying to increase your bankroll because you want to prove it to your parents or your friends that you can make it as a professional, that you're not punting too much money? Or are you thinking about the long-term results of your mind and your talents and your ability in the game to be able to improve as a player? And in life as well, you can extrapolate that and say, like, are you spending too much time trying to chase women when you could be spending time on yourself? Are you trying to make loads of money instantly when you could be turning yourself into somebody that's great at making money, so in the future making better decisions, and then you'll be able to make a lot more money in the long term? It's a complicated thing. That's the second bit I would say. I guess it's more like, it's something along the lines of, when you're in a pot, you have to be able to say no. You have to be able to. It's a little side thing. When you're in a hand, you have to be able to say no to a little bit of dopamine. I struggle with this a lot still. I love hero calling people. Like, I love it. It's such a fucking free roll of joy where you get to be like, yeah, fucking ace high might be good and cool. And if you're right, you're a genius. Everyone's like, oh my god, it's an ace high. And if you're wrong, you're like, cooler, whatever. So I struggle with this a lot, but it's me trying to chase that short-term joy, being super invested in a hand, where the more wise version of me, hopefully in the future, will be able to say, okay, even if it's going to feel really fucking good if you win this, put it aside and wait till the next go. It's long-term thinking over short-term thinking. It's balance. It's not always you go long instead of short, but it's important. How well do you know your emotional proclivities? I already kind of touched on this, so I won't go on it for too long, but there are people.
I wanted to ask a question about the previous slide.
Oh, please do, yeah. I was actually just about to ask if there are any questions as well.
How do you advise to remove that obsession? Because I would consider myself someone who's obsessed with short-term results, to the point where I get to long-term results by accident, because the short-term results are positive consistently, and then they become long-term, by sheer accident.
Yeah.
And if the short-term at any point fails, then I just give up, or like I never think about that long-term aspect. What tips would you have to kind of remove that obsession?
So why do you think that you give up when you fail?
I guess it's less give up, because I try again, but what I guess I'm saying is I like to ride the wave. So for example, if I have a streak going of good results,
yeah.
I like to try my best to maintain that streak. Or if I do something diligently for about 30 days or something, I have that mentality that, oh, okay, I've done it for the 30-day streak, I'd love to carry that on, just because I'd like to see that streak grow. But if I stop that streak on like day 600, it would just completely suck. And I would just like have that negative emotion attached to whatever thing I was doing. I just wouldn't do it and try again like next year or whenever like my mood kind of aligns with that activity or goal.
I love how smart work people in resistance. So it sounds like you're not super struggling with long-term versus short-term there. It sounds like you have a really good ability to be in the moment and succeed in that moment. And that is a different concept to long-term versus short-term thinking. It's very, very important to be able to want to win and want to do the best in any individual moment, because all you have is the present moment. Obviously you can set long-term goals and things like that, but actually the most important thing is the present moment. The difference is, if you're thinking about long-term versus short-term, like, are you making decisions about just trying to win a bunch of money now, or are you trying to expand your horizons and say, okay, I'm gonna try and get really good? But you can whittle that down to the short-term again and say, okay, I'm gonna try and get really good at the cash games, so now I'm gonna try and do the best I can in cash games. So do you think you struggle setting the intentions or setting the goals of where you're heading, or is it more the emotional side of the short-term things that you're struggling with?
It's hard to answer that in like a black and white kind of context. I mean, if I were to talk strictly poker, I would be akin to like that hero calling attitude. Or if I have like a 7 deuce or something like that, so I do like wild things just for like that short term like dopamine hit. And you know, I can't really control when it happens or when it doesn't. I'm not aware of when it's happening or when it's not.
Okay, I think I'm understanding the question a bit more. Sorry, I got a bit confused, I think. So, trying to answer this seriously as well. You have to understand why you're doing these things. And for me, like the hero calling side of things is because I like to look cool. And the reason I like to look cool is because I didn't look very cool when I was a kid. I got really bullied, and I like when people around me go, "Oh shit, that was a really clever thing to do," you know. And I put loads of value in my intellect because that was one of the things, one of the preventative measures I took when I was a kid. It's like I made sure I was the smart one, so at least I had that to fall back on, so I didn't feel shit about myself. So you have to understand your own emotional proclivities, which is actually the next one, I think, to be able to understand why you're doing all of these different things. So I mean, we could go into it depth now if you like. Yeah. Okay. So, what is it about winning that you think makes you more attached than other people would be?
Why do I like?
Yeah, why do you like winning more than other people, and in probably an unhealthy way? Why do you think?
I wouldn't call it unhealthy, but that's the only word I can think of.
Punts and 7 deuce is pretty unhealthy, my friend.
An obsession of winning or beating people to the point where it's like a humiliating loss, you know, like making sure that it's like a complete beatdown, that kind of thing. I love that sensation or feeling.
And that is a huge benefit to have as one of your emotional proclivities, that you have that animalistic side of you that wants to crush. But I guess like the mirror image, the dark side of that is that, you know, when you get crushed, it probably really hurts, or you really struggle with it. So I would say, like, one way that I would tackle this is, imagine a world where you play poker or you play whatever you're doing, or you do whatever you're doing, and you just get crushed and crushed and crushed and crushed and crushed. Imagine that the next week of your life, the next month of your life, you just get annihilated in social interactions, in poker, in relationships, whatever it is. And then really meditate and feel what it feels like to experience that. It's gonna hurt. Hopefully, if you're good at exploring that yourself and empathizing with yourself, you can actually feel the pain. And then realize the world is still beautiful. And that's one way to really remove an attachment from something. Like if I'm sitting there, and this is one of the meditation techniques I do when I'm playing poker, is like, I'll be sitting in a tournament, and what happens is that people often, I think it's going to be on one of the other slides, but people really like to zoom in on a situation. Like, this is my life right now, this is my universe. If you're in a relationship, somebody gets broken up with, and it looks like they've just got told they've got cancer and they've got 3 days to live, because that was their world. Their whole universe zoomed in, so their perspective was so in on this one person that when something slightly bad happens, like she gets annoyed, you're like, oh, I feel that, like my whole life gets bad. Whereas if you take a step back and you spend time with friends, you take a walk, like, okay, it's just fucking nothing happens. So zooming out your perspective is one way that I would address these kind of things. So like if I'm sitting there playing a tournament, and I'll always check whenever I'm playing a hand, or before I'm playing a hand, I'll always ask myself, like, how much do I care about winning? And the answer has to be, I really want to win, but everything's fucking okay if I don't. And I have to check in with myself emotionally, and not just rationally. Rationally, I always know that. I never lose that, luckily. But emotionally, that comes and goes because I'm a human. So if I feel that, oh, I really want to win, then I imagine a world where I lose, and I bust that tournament, or I do whatever the losing entails in that specific scenario, and I'm like, the world's still beautiful. And I'll literally imagine the world spinning, or birds sing, I'll imagine Hannah, or my family, or whatever it is that keeps me happy, and be like, okay, there's one thing I've zoomed in on, it doesn't matter. So, how well do you know your emotional proclivities? Like I said, I touched on it a little bit. Generally, when you're a young dude, you're not meant to know your emotional proclivities super well in today's society. We're all fucked up. We got born into a society that really messed us up pretty bad with emotions hard luck on us, tough being a white male or whatever people say is the meme. But it is really, really difficult to be in touch with your emotions when you're a dude. And I was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum to, where I wanted to be when I first started playing poker. And luckily, I was so egotistical and so emotionless that it didn't affect me a lot of the time. But it did mean that I went months at a time going on these huge downswings where, I'd had like a breakup or something. I didn't know it was affecting me emotionally, and then I would just have these few months where I was just hunting every single big spot, and I didn't know why. I was just like trying to intellectualize my way out of it, and it didn't work. So understand, are you the kind of person that pussies out too much? Most people are. It's okay. Most people, when it comes to a huge amount of money, they're the kind of person that really, really screws up because they're scared of losing that much money. Again, going back to the emotional attachment thing, it's a really, really important thing. Are you the kind of person that wants to crush people too much? Are you the kind of person that doesn't enjoy taking other people's money because you empathize too much with someone? All of these phenomena are something that's super important to understand so you can counteract it in a very conscious way. How much does your focus drift? Well, I've been paying very close attention to people in the audience, so I can kind of give you some answers for you. Answer this out of 10. Like, how well can you maintain attentiveness for long periods of time? Over there in the, so
probably a 7.
pretty fucking good. Are we talking like,
Depends how interested I am in what I'm doing.
makes sense. How well are you doing this? Nice.
Depending on the time frame, like probably a couple hours, like 7 or 8.
Yeah, you're good at like podcasts, but not good at like lectures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty fucking good. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you guys. You're probably not the kind of stereotypical dude because you're all in Warwick University. You're probably a lot more intellectual than the average person, but a lot of people in life, they're not very good at staying attentive for more than even 10 seconds because they're spending time on TikTok, they're watching all of these shorts, they're doing anything that they can to distract themselves from the real world and not focus on a task at hand. And in poker, one of the best things you can do if you really want to succeed is from day one, pay attention to everything. Don't be on your phone unless you're talking hand to people, and fair enough. Don't be listening to a podcast. When you're not in a hand, not only are you looking at the hand and trying to work out, I wonder what would happen if I did that, I wonder how he's going to react in that, but you're looking for tells. Huge, huge, huge thing. Every single hand I'm not in, even if I'm playing the fucking 1-1, and I've made it as a poker player, I don't play that much poker, but even when I'm playing a 1-1 now, I'm staring at everyone. Sometimes it's uncomfortable because I'm not very good at doing like a soft gaze, but people get really aggressive about it, so try not to be too aggressive, but make sure you're looking at absolutely everything. And live tells, I don't know how much you guys have delved into this world. It is an unexplored jungle. There is so much money out there. There is millions and millions and millions of pounds left on the table for people to make because they don't understand live tells where you could. It genuinely, I always had this metaphor going around my head when I was exploring live poker. It felt like I had a machete in my hand. I was like fucking hacking down vines of unexplored territory in the world. And it was because nobody was paying attention to live tells. And I'd look at other people and they wouldn't be looking at me. And you'll see loads of the footage you have of me on TV. I'll turn it straight and I'll just have this big grin on my face. And I'm like happy and I'm making a point. It's like, the guy's not looking at me. I can grin. What happened to poker? What happened to back in the 70s when Doyle Brunson and Suong were staring each other down, trying to read each other's souls? And the reason that people have stopped caring about it is because poker has recently selected for the more mathematically minded. The online kids have taken over the old school kids. And when you're really good at maths, you're often not very good at psychology. It's like a really, really rare mix to get. So you don't have to be great at empathizing, you don't have to be good at feeling other people, but you have to be good at understanding what this means. What does it mean when his pulse up goes up like that? What does it mean when his feet does that? when his feet do that. How does his blinking rate interact with the hand at play? What is the chance that he's doing that on purpose or accidentally? And there are so many patterns that are universal throughout all human beings, some of which are really fucking uncontrollable. And a lot of people, let's take the pulse for example, a lot of people will say, okay, the pulse goes up when I have it, when I'm bluffing, so it doesn't matter. But they don't understand the nuances of it. They don't understand, did it go up on the flop? Did it go up on the turn? Did it go up 5 seconds after the turn came out? So obviously he didn't hit the turn, he just decided he was going to bluff it. There's so many different things that you could be weighing in, and then if you, let's say you can make 60% more accurate reads on the river because of that, how does that change the theory of the game? Let's say I'm playing a tournament. Let's say, fuck it, let's say I'm playing a cash game. Let's take a hard thing to adjust because it's in a vacuum. I now, if I can make 60% more accurate reads on the river against this guy, I have to take a more passive line on the flop and the turn because I need to be in positions where I'm going to be making a decision against him instead of him making a decision against me when I'm bluffing or value betting. So I might decide to check call flop, check call turn, and check decide river with like bottom pair where I would have usually folded the turn or the flop because I know I can make some sick hero calls against this person. It's an unexplored jungle out there, and the first way to get good at it is pay attention, get a good data set. If you get like 1 million hands in, or maybe not a million because life is slow, but like let's say like 50k hands in over the next 10 years, are you the person that's looked at all 50k of them or nearly all 50k of them, or are you the person that's only looked at the ones that you're in? And your data set is going to be vastly different, so start as soon as you can, and I'm sure you can make some kind of metaphor or extrapolation towards life. I can't think of it, so good luck. How often do you pay attention to yourself? Again, this is kind of something we brushed on already, but it's something that is I really can't iterate how important this is. Every single thing you do, you're doing for a bunch of different reasons. There's going to be 50 reasons why you turned up here today. There's going to be 50 reasons why you decided to say that word instead of that word in a sentence. There's going to be 50 reasons why your body language is like that, why your posture's like this. Are you paying attention to exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it? Do you understand yourself? Are you putting your mind into the moment in everything that you do? Or are you just acting on autopilot? Because the people who are the most successful in the world, and I've spoken to a lot of extraordinarily successful people, you get in a conversation, I don't know if anyone watches like Joe Rogan. If you watch him in a conversation, hands up who watch Joe Rogan. Decent, I was expecting one pretty decent. I fucking love Joe Rogan. If you watch him in a conversation, he is zoned in on you. He is not faltering a single moment because he's mindful, he's present, he's precise with his words. Sometimes. Sometimes he's high. And it's the same across the board with successful people that I've met. You'll be in a conversation with them and they're there. Their attention is on you. No matter if you're speaking about something dull, no matter if you're speaking about something fascinating, they're there, they're listening, and when they're replying, they're genuinely thinking. And you can tell the difference between people when you just say like, hey, how you doing today? A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm good, thanks. They won't even think about it. 90-something% of people will say that. Be the person that when someone asks you that, just think, I was feeling good this morning, then yeah, I had a really like shitty thing happen to me about a couple of hours ago, so I'm feeling a bit wobbly right now, so apologies if I come across quite wobbly, but I'm really happy to do this conversation with you. Something along those lines. Not only does it make you a fucking more interesting person, it makes you a more authentic person. So be mindful about everything that you do. It's very, very hard to do it, but if you put the intention into it, your life will be changed in every way possible. Do you do what you do because you love it, or because you think you should be doing it? Teach yourself to follow the joy. Alright, I'll ask you a question. Out of 10, how much do you love the subject that you're currently studying in university? Who is 5 and below? What are you studying?
Could be a side.
I understand. Why are you studying it?
I thought I liked it a lot more than I did, but then I guess coming to uni and having a lot more work into it and going deeper into it, I've kind of realized
just not as fun as I thought it was. Yeah. I had the same thing with maths. So like when I was younger, I thought I just loved maths because it was the thing I was good at. It's the thing that I spent my time doing because I got validation from other people. It was going to make me loads of money. I found it interesting and nuanced. I didn't go to university. Luckily, I would have studied maths, but later on down the line, I found out I love maths, but I don't love maths. You know, I like it. You know, whatever. And the reason that I was going to do maths in university was because that's what makes me money. That's what I told I should do. You know, that's what I was good at. That's what everyone. If you gave my resume of being a school kid to someone and said, "What should I do with my time?" they would just be like, "I'm going to do maths, of course." So you can be a banker, you can be a theoretical physicist, do whatever. Thank God I didn't become a mathematician, because I know myself now. I would have been disastrously bored. I wouldn't have known it. I would have just been sitting inside an office or wherever mathematicians sit and been thinking to myself, something feels off. Why am I not loving what I'm doing? Like, why am I not happy? Why do I feel depressed? And the reason would have been because I wasn't following the joy. I wasn't following what I truly loved. And it's really, who's 10 out of 10? What did you say?
Astronomy.
Astronomy? Cool. What do you love about it?
I enjoy it in the fact that you can understand the whole universe, like understand Earth, or like understanding the universe. But I have PhD students, so I'm in math and that one.
Cool. Are there any astronomy students, you think, that believe in astrology as well?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Most of the time people get confused between the two.
Yeah.
So people actually ask you, oh, so you're like this star?
Yeah, you're a Taurus, or what's up?
It's hard not to react sharply at times.
But do people in your course believe in it, do you think?
It depends what you find as astrology, I guess. Just like core belief, then sure. I think a lot of people do. I think it's a really foundation part of it, like why you want to understand every component of the universe, like why it's there to start with. But in terms of actually saying, I was born in this month, no, but they're probably mindful as well that, I was born at this time of the academic year, so I'm probably going to have this more like
the rationalist astrology.
Yeah.
Cool.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, no, that's good. So it's so beautiful that you love what you do, and in my opinion, there is nothing that will bring you more success in life than following what feels good. So obviously for you, astronomy feels great. And for me, poker felt great. Now it doesn't feel as good. Now, you know, I love teaching poker as much as I love playing it. I love working on my charity that I'm doing. I'm following what feels right for me. And it's not an easy question. What do I love doing? And a lot of people, if you ask them, do you love what you do? They'll say yes. They don't actually mean it. Or they're delusional in thinking that they do, because they think that they must love it. Otherwise, why would they spend 8 hours a day doing it? It's like a kind of sunk cost fallacy. Like, why would I do anything this much if I don't love it? But you don't see the joy in their eyes. You see them walking through you see them going to their job every day and they're miserable. And I see that a lot. I watch people very, very closely in London, and I watch them turn up in suits. And they're a lot less happy than people that are in the countryside turning up to their cows. So what kind of life do you want to live, and why do you want to live it? Are you chasing what you think you should be doing, or are you chasing what you love doing? Now, I love poker. Honestly, I could write a book about how much I love poker, about the nuance of it, about the theory of it, about the psychology of it, about how those things integrate into this beautiful, unique way, and how you have to take all of these variables and conduct a multivariate analysis inside your mind, quieten your mind, let your intuition play, and make a singular, discrete decision. I love it. Can you say the same about what you're trying to do in the world? Can you say the same about the job that you're trying to pursue? Because if you can't, is that really what you want to be doing for the rest of your life? How do you behave when you're scared? Teach yourself to run towards fear. Yeah, take 15 seconds and answer that question. I think it's the last slide. And back.
Probably anxious, but that's probably staying the obvious one.
The opposite of what?
Running towards it.
Okay. Does anyone love being scared? What's up, brother? Good. Love to hear it. What do you love about being scared?
I like moments when I'm really put on the spot, like all the pressure's on.
Yeah.
Those are the most interesting moments in life.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. And you can ask Hannah. I fucking love it. I dig that shit. And there are some things that used to scare me so much, like for instance, dancing. Dancing is something, so when I was younger, I used to get bullied for the way that I walked. I'd like walk like this. I remember getting that lesson from my mum. She'd be like, try and walk like this. And I'd be like, it's fucking impossible. So, and I got really, really bullied for that. So I got very, very scared of how I moved and how other people perceived me moving. And I became just this insecure blob. Like, if anybody even, if I was by myself in a room and I thought, what would it be like to dance right now? I would get so much anxiety that I wouldn't even be able to start moving. And now look at me. Yeah. I can do some stupid moves in front of people because what I did is I started small. I danced in front of my fish tank every single fucking day. And then I danced in front of some other people and some other people. I danced in a club. I went to some hippie events. I did some ecstatic dancing. I eventually danced in front of Hannah, which was one of the most terrifying things. She is the best dancer I've ever seen in my life, probably. It's fucking phenomenal. And then I eventually got to the point where the fear was gone. In poker, there are going to be a ton of things that you're scared of doing, even if you're not aware of it. Moving up stakes is the classic. A lot of people, you'll find crushing. Like I got a guy in my group, the Charmanders, that is called Hector. Comes fourth in everything for some reason, which is actually quite lucrative. It's good strategy. Very good at fourth. But he's crushing at the moment. He's probably got like a 100K bankroll, but he's still playing like the $100 tournaments because he doesn't quite have that oomph to go up and face the fear of playing, say, a 1K or a 2K or a 5K or something like that. And he is probably going to be making more money in the short term, but again, short term versus long term, we want to be going for the long term. What happened, so recently, I don't know if any of you watched my YouTube channel, I played Linus Heads Up. I got a little crush, not too crushed, I got a little crush, but if we carried on playing, I would have got annihilated because he is the best in the world. He is a fucking human computer incarnate. And the reason I did it, or one of the reasons I did it, is because it scared the living shit out of me. I would sit down in front of that computer, and I'd be like, I'm a professional poker player. I get dealt, he sits in, I'm like, I've forgotten my opening ranges. And I carried on playing, and I carried on playing, and I must have burnt like 20K or something, just to get to the point where I didn't feel nervous playing him. And then I felt, okay, I can stop now, thank God. Because it was getting expensive. So, brother.
You feel the same live? Playing him live, do you feel the same?
Oh no, crushing live. one of the best live tells, fucking smorgasbord out there. But online he's a terrifying beast. Happens so much when you meet like the best people online. You have this image of them being like a terrifying person, and you meet them and they're just kind of nerdy and like, oh. That was so scary. So that I would say is the last thing, is find what you're scared of and run headfirst towards it and start to enjoy the sensation of it. Are you scared of spiders? Are you scared of women? That doesn't mean go up and harass them in the street. They don't like that, I've heard. But it does mean that perhaps you want to be, speaking to them about stuff that scares you, starting a conversation in a bar or a club where it's like a bit more socially acceptable. If you're scared of dancing, how many people here would be comfortable getting up right now and singing? Hands up. Well, you can't. But if you weren't, you'd be comfortable. You a singer? Okay. That doesn't count. Nobody else would be comfortable singing. Does anyone want to? I'll sing with you. Not a single person. And that says, I genuinely will. I've got a fucking speaker, I can connect to Bluetooth, whatever. And I think that says a lot. Singing is such a natural part of being human. Dancing is such a natural part of being human. We've been conditioned out of being human by a society that has stripped us from our spirituality and our connection with the earth and ourselves and each other. If you can't sing in front of a bunch of people, what the hell? You're insecure. You're scared. And all of us are. So you're in great company. So whatever it is you're scared of, run towards it. I guarantee you'll be a better person after you come out. As long as you don't kill yourself. And that is my talk. Thank you. Do we do questions?
Yeah, could you?
Yeah, let's do some questions. Other question then?
When you play now, what would you play? If you don't play
If I could play them, I'd play high stakes tournaments. I'm not allowed to play the WSOP for fucking 2 reasons.
Why?
I didn't get the mRNA thing, and I also can't travel to America because I got banned like 3 or 4 years ago. It's back in my drug days, very, very accidentally, and it genuinely was an accident. Took some MDMA over the border, and they're like not chill with that. So, so yeah, but if I could play some high stakes tournaments, then that would be the one, because I just love live poker. I even played like a 1K recently just because I was so into it. I just miss it.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, who would you say your biggest influences were inside of poker and then outside of poker?
So outside of poker, I find it a lot easier, I think. Hannah, number one. And I'm not just saying that. When she and I met, I was a completely different human. Imagine like the archetypal Jungian psychology, masculine and feminine. We were so embodied in that. I was this hyper-rational, completely skeptical of everything, like really, really thought in straight lines, didn't see the bigger picture. Hannah was the opposite, was just fucking up in the air, just didn't know how to put a string of thoughts together. But when I actually spoke to her and when I understood the way that she saw the world, it was so curved, it was so round, it was so deep, it was so nuanced. It was like, imagine that you and I would say, okay, what do you think of this person? And we'd say, well, I like that he's he's intellectual. I like that he's got a really good sense of humor. Hannah's mind would be like, he's blue, is like, and it'll come up like a flavor, and it sounds like complete bollocks, but the more you dig into it, the more depth it is, and it's like this subjective and nuanced thing that when you articulate, you're like, holy shit. So Hannah has probably definitely been my biggest influence ever. Apart from that, people that I like kind of public figures that you guys know, I really like Jordan Peterson. I think he was very controversial or whatever, but I think he's one of the most authentic people out there. In poker, Ben number one. Like none of the high stakes players really influenced. Like I had people that I looked up to and admired. Like I really loved Phil Ivey, but I've probably been more influenced by one of my students. Like I can think of a guy I teach called Frank. I love him so much. He is so enthusiastic, so funny, so intelligent and so creative. And he's taught me so much about myself when I'm trying to teach him, because he's this really unique individual. So yeah, I probably learned more from my students than I have from any big public figure. Anyone else?
When you play poker recreationally, like there's no pressure in winning necessarily, because that's not your main source of income. But if you turn a professional, then you kind of have to win, as that is going to be your main source of income. How would you make the transition between the two, and how is it easy to make it?
So the question is, if you play poker recreationally, there isn't too much pressure to win.
Yeah.
But if you play professionally, there is. So how do you transition between the two? I saw this so archetypally with Ben, the guy that I just mentioned, Ben Heath, the guy that I live with. He had this big chip on his shoulder. He needed to pay his parents back the money that they lent him. He needed to prove that he could sustain himself as healthy by club. No, fine. He needed to sustain himself as a professional poker player, so he could prove himself. And he always took it so hard when he lost, because not only was he losing hand, he was losing the potential to be a poker player. He would zoom in all of his life on that one little hand that he lost, that 100, 200 big blind pot, and say, I've lost it. So the way to depressurize the situation is to zoom out. Is to zoom out from the situation and say, it doesn't matter if I win or lose this hand. I'm going to do everything that I can to win this hand, but it doesn't matter. And one of the things that really stuck with Ben is that, I don't know if anyone knows Greg Merson, he's one of the WSOP champions. We lived with him over a summer, and he said, hey Ben, I know you're caring a lot about these results right now, but you know, eventually you're going to be a millionaire, you'll be looking back at this and you'll be laughing about it when you make your first million. And that's exactly what happened. You know, he made many, many millions, and now he looks back at those $50 bucks and he laughs. Like, obviously not everyone's going to make that much money, but eventually your life will have developed so far. You might have a family, you might have some cats, whatever makes you happy. You might be great at poker, you might be a banker, you might have made loads of money in crypto like Bitcoin. Trust me. Hands up who's into crypto? Everyone else? Pumped. Then you'll look back at these situations and you'll be like, why the fuck did I care? So if you can take back the perspective before you get to the future, if you can imagine how big life is and will be before you actually have to live it, you're in a great position to just be fearless in these situations because you don't care about winning or losing. But you also really care because you really want it.
You don't have to answer because I know it's personal.
Oh please, as personal as possible.
What do you think of the current state of UK politics?
Oh, I am an expert in this, so give me 1 second to prepare another PowerPoint. I think that we've reached such a height of corruption, and I really see it, like using my poker ability to read some people. I see that some people that used to have some kind of integrity, they're just mouthpiecing right now, they don't believe what they're saying. Like Boris Johnson, he doesn't believe half the shit he says anymore, and I think it's because being corrupt by corporate entities that have taken over a lot of the world governments through influence and lobbying and things like that, despite the laws trying to stop them from doing it. And I think it's a beautiful moment where the curtain is being lifted on the corruption that's happening around the world right now. More and more people are waking up to exactly what kind of disgusting things are happening around the world. This isn't that personal, by the way.
Some people don't like to share it.
No, definitely, fair enough. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I love you. It doesn't matter. And I think that 2020, 2021 have been such beautiful moments where people have really started to pay attention to corruption and
The environment as well.
and the environment. Although that's a very polarizing topic still. A lot of people get pretty angry when you mention that word.
Like you mentioned about the story about you being like scared to play lioness or lion. Was the only like factor that you helped you overcome that? Was that just through like volume, or was there anything else that like helped you to like play against players you're like intimidated or sort of?
Yeah. So something you run into if you went to a therapist is something called exposure therapy, which is just fucking doing it, running towards the fear and actually doing it. So that's definitely one way. I did have, luckily, a lot of techniques already embedded in me through years of meditation to know, like, okay, I feel this, why do I feel it? I'd sit out or I'd stop. Okay, why am I feeling this? Why did I play a hand like that? And I'd be like, it's because of this or it's because of that, it's because people might perceive me like that, and I'd dig into that emotion, I'd feel it as hard as I could. And something, I don't know if anyone knows, Krishnamurti is some fucking genius spiritual Indian dude back in a few decades ago. He's a really, really big advocate of if you feel an emotion, just putting all of your attention into that emotion. Don't name the emotion. Don't replace the story that the emotion's trying to tell with another story. So if you're saying, I'm scared of him, you don't need to replace it with the words, I am not scared of him. You just pay it attention, let it disappear. And that's what I did. And it worked out reasonably well, in an extensive way.
In your poker journey, so you're talking about your, I guess, former roommate or friend Ben. You must have met other aspiring poker players or pro poker players. What percentage would you say of those people that you knew or tried to travel that same journey with you failed or gave up? And why do you think it was so high? What was the common theme, if you know?
Yeah, so I would probably want to restructure the question a little bit because there'll be a bit of selection bias. Because the people that I met were already kind of professionals or semi-professionals, because I started meeting people when I was live and they were playing like at least 2-5 kind of thing. So people that I met, most of them are still professional poker players. A few of them went bust. People that I think a better sample size, or a better selection of people, I forgot the sample, is people that I speak to online. I get 20 messages a day from people, maybe 10 messages a day from people who want to be professional poker players, that I will be able to tell just from that one message that they're not going to make it. And I would say probably about 95%, maybe 90% of people that try to be professional poker players don't make it. And I think I brushed on it before. The main thing is just lack of talent. Like, a lot of people aren't smart enough. And intelligence is something you can cultivate, but it's also something that's very hard to cultivate in certain ways, and it's something that I don't understand enough to be able to speak as an expert on, but there seems to be some immutable characteristic that can't make people better at maths, you know, or at least it would take them a lot longer to get good at maths than it would somebody like you or other people around here. So that's a huge thing, but then when people are good at it, the mental side, the mental game is just overpowering. Like, there was this one guy I taught. He was the boyfriend of my ex-girlfriend, and I decided to teach him how to play poker to try and like help him be financially stable. He was a smart dude. He was a rational dude. He had the potential to do it. He was doing really well. He's my star student, better than Helena, the other person I was teaching, and he was crushing. And then one day, I looked at his graph. It was pointing down, and it never stopped going down. It never stopped going down. And that was because his attitude, he didn't believe this because he was like a very like atheist, like closed-minded, didn't think spirituality was important. And so he didn't take time to just sit out. Like, he would study and play, spend dozens of hours doing it, but he wouldn't take time to sit out and study himself. So I'd say that that's probably the next most important thing. And I actually made a masterclass on it, and because I think it's that important. Not because it's like the most lucrative thing, because nobody fucking buys a spirituality masterclass in comparison to any other masterclass I make, but because when people really care about what they want to do, I can point them towards that and be like, spend 10 hours doing this, and you'll come out the other side equipped to be able to handle the rest of your poker career and maybe other aspects of your life as well. So yeah, not caring about spirituality. You can call it something else if you want, like emotional proclivities.
Can I add a second question to that? It just reminded me, when you were describing spirituality, in my mind, that's how I define mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like every day, like at a certain time, I take 10 minutes off my day to reflect on what's happened today and how I feel about it and so on and so forth. But in your opinion or thoughts, what do you define as the difference between spirituality and mindfulness?
Yeah, so I would be careful not to get bogged down in semantics, obviously, and you can define these things however you want. Mindfulness to me is putting your mind in something, like being in a moment and being present. Like that person that answers, "How are you doing today?" with an actual present answer. Like, you're putting your mind into that situation. You're not mindless. You know, you're not without mind. That's how I would define it. And spirituality, like I said, is for me understanding oneself and understanding the universe because of the way that you understand yourself. Like, you imagine you can be somebody who studies the stars. You can be an astronomer. Yeah. You can be an astronomer and you can spend your whole life studying the way that galaxies move, and you can have these competing hypotheses with other scientists. You can be studying dark matter and you can have this really strong opinion about dark matter, and then 10 years down the line you find out you're completely wrong, and you're trying to understand, like, why was I so hard bent on this being a correct hypothesis or theory? And then you might understand it's because I really wanted to be right. It's because I really cared about being right, and that guy who kept telling me I was wrong really rubbed me up the wrong way because he reminded me of my brother who used to beat me up when I was a kid, and fuck, it's all coming out and I'm crying to a therapist when I could have done it when I was a lot younger. So for me, spirituality would be that. It would be understanding oneself so you can understand the world around you in a lot better, in a lot more nuanced way. Agreed?
Yeah. Has having money changed your perspective on life? Has it brought you what you thought it would bring emotionally, or is it not something you've ever considered?
Yeah, great question. I never sought after money when I was a kid. I always thought I was going to be rich. For some reason, I just had that feeling. I used to be a drug dealer when I was a kid, and I'd make the money and then just give it out to my friends because I just didn't care about it. I just wanted the experience. If anyone's, please know that joke. Pure comedic effect. But money changes you. You know, money changes everything about you, and I would like to think that I'm one of the people that hasn't been changed in a cliche way. And I was so aware of it when I first got money. I was like, it's such a fucking cliche for someone to make money young, think they're the shit, treat everyone else like crap, and just become an asshole. So I was so mindful not to do that even back when I wasn't into spirituality or anything like that, because I just hated the thought of being a cliche. I definitely still notice it myself though. Like, I'll sometimes go into like a restaurant or a hotel, and let's say I'm in my pajamas, because sometimes I walk around in my pajamas or hippie clothing or something like that. I usually not often dressed like, not always dressed like this at least. And somebody, you know, this happened multiple times, like the receptionist has been like, do you know, this hotel, it costs like £350 for a night? And I'll be like, yeah. And I'll feel myself putting the inflection in my voice to make it like, yeah, obviously it does, you know, like, and it's this egotistical thing of like, I belong here because I feel judged, and that to me tells me that there's a part of me that's telling a story about myself, that I care about being somebody that's perceived to have money in the moments where I'm insecure. So that is one way that I believe that it has impacted me, like it's played on my insecurities. And I've tried to counteract this in every single way possible, but it's a big one, you know, because when you have money, I often make the comparison to being like an attractive woman. The way that people interact with an attractive woman is out of this world. Like, you'll have some completely normal bros, a girl turns up at the party, and everyone's fucking weirder. They're just like awkward, they don't know how to move, they're suddenly trying to make jokes that aren't funny, and it's like everything's weird. They'll be extra nice to the girl, they'll pay her extra attention, they'll think that her jokes are way funnier than they are. And it's because of this social status thing that's built into our bodies and into our minds through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. I care about this woman validating me, I care about this woman wanting to fuck me, and it's the same with guys that have power. And in today's society, money is power. You know, money is unrealized power, unreified energy, and people treat you very, very differently when they know you have money. You know, I probably wouldn't be at this talk if I didn't have money. I wouldn't be invited to it. I mean, success in poker is kind of it as well, but it's wild. Like, people will listen to me about politics. I'm not saying you did, but like, I can speak about something and I can feel that there are a bunch of people that will treat me differently because I have money, and they'll start thinking, like, people listen to Elon Musk about politics. Like he you know, he's very good at science, that's his thing, but that doesn't mean because he's a billionaire he's going to know loads about these things. Or like Bill Gates about pharmacology, you know, so there's a bunch of different things where people think this guy's rich, so we should listen to him about everything. And what I really try and do is just remove myself from those kind of situations and surround myself with people that I don't feel are acting differently towards me, and I feel like would love me no matter if I had £0 in my bank or Bitcoin wallet or whatever, crypto wallet, or if I had infinite. The last thing I would say is that for somebody that dedicates themselves towards trying to help as many people as possible, money is a really, really weird experience to go through having. Because let's say I think a tournament for $1 million, and peace. Nice to meet you, brother.
Yeah, really good presentation.
Let's say I think a tournament for $1 million. I know that I could feed a few 100,000 Kenyan families for a year, you know, or for a month, whatever it is, for a month. And with that money, or I could probably resurrect some like village in Africa that really fucking needs the money and save the lives of maybe like 1,000 people with that money that I've just been playing a fucking game. So I've really started to pay attention to how money interacts with the world and what that means. Like, you know, if you give £5 to someone at Starbucks, or if you give £5 to someone on the street, that makes a huge difference. So I really try and see the world through that lens of like how my money can shape me into a person that will be better at making money and distributing money out to other people, and how I can utilize it in a way that's going to help other people be happier and people that need it more. So yeah, money's a fucking weird one. Great.
I think you find a lot of joy in being empathetic and just seeing things through our eyes, like you say. Like a lot of stuff, maybe you just seek it. So when someone comes up to you in Twitch chat or in a casino and says about a bad B story, are you annoyed because it's just a repetitive statement, or are you happy because you're helping them deal with it?
Yeah. Are you in my Twitch chat, by the way?
I'm a lurker.
Hey, what's up, bro? Say hi next time. I'll remember you. Just I'm never annoyed by it. I love it when like Hannah sees me. It's a weird thing. I don't know if it's some fucking weird universal thing. Every time we go out, I get recognized once. Every time. And it's not twice. It's just once. Every single time. Unless I go to a casino, then it's like a lot of people coming up and like taking photos. And every time I just fucking love it. The interactions I have is so beautiful. Even if it's someone, and I do get a lot of bad beat stories because, you know, it's like a shoulder to cry on kind of thing, but I love them. You know, I love hearing, I'll be like, no, tell me the rest of the hand. Like, I want to hear how it played out. Like, you got ace kings, was it a shitty run out? Like, what happened? And I don't think that's so much being empathetic. I think I just love people. Like, I really love people. I just, everyone that I meet, if I don't love them, it's because something weird's happening in me. Or, you know, some ego thing's coming out. Yeah.
So you're more happy that they're just talking in general to you rather than what they're talking about? Or
yeah, I love conversations with people that open up and are themselves. Like, I love authenticity. It's pretty rare to find in the real world. Like, you'll find it a lot more in a university because people are really exploring them. In like this university especially, people are exploring themselves. They're thinking deeply about themselves, and you'll be able to find people who really care about expressing what they truly feel and what they truly think. And I love that. I love that. I would rather meet an authentic sociopath that has like nefarious intentions than meet somebody that's like a kind of nice and boring person, you know. Hi.
Yeah, so thank you for the talk, and you seem to be a very spiritual person. And I'm curious, like, do you think God exists? And if so, like, what makes you think that God exists?
So God is like a weird word. Hannah knows I never use the word God if I'm like, thank God. I use the word universe, and my personal belief is that we're in a panpsychic universe, and it's something that is definitely debated amongst the greatest minds in the world. Panpsychic meaning that the fundamental layer of the universe is consciousness instead of matter, and that consciousness creates matter, or the matter comes from consciousness, and that consciousness is a type of awareness, and there are different layers of consciousness that come from it. So I believe that the universe is conscious in ways that the human brain, unless is very, very fine-tuned at deep meditation, which mine is not, cannot understand in the slightest. To say why I believe in that, it would take a very, very long time, and there would be many, many other people that would speak about this better. Some of the best minds in history, even the mathematicians like Newton, Bertrand Russell, I think they were panpsychists as well, and Albert Einstein as well, I believe was, and he believed in what he called God. They would be much better to listen to, but my personal experience, and I like saying this kind of thought experiment. I don't know if anyone wants to fucking hear it, but we'll go with it and walk out if no one. Hands up who believes in reincarnation. Above, above 70% sure that reincarnation exists. Yeah. So I used to be 0.01%. I used to be in the mindset maybe 0.001%. I probably said that a bit too generous, so bro. Nice catch. I used to be in the mindset of like, if you don't have scientific evidence for it, then fuck you. I would love debating people that believe in this hippie woo-woo stuff. And then I went on a series of experiences where the universe just kicked my ass. And if I was ever write a fictional book, it would be of a character that was atheist, materialist, naturalist, rationalist, and goes through a spiritual journey, questioning and doubting every single step along the way. And it's beautiful watching people do it. Like Jungle Man, for instance, Dan Case's one of the most famous poker players. He's going through a very, very similar thing right now, and there are other poker players out there that's like so rational, but then when they're presented with spirituality, they're like, fuck, that makes sense. Like, oh God, I'm gonna have to question this, and they go through this whole decomposition of their worldview. So let's say you're traveling. Let's say you're an atheist. Let's say you're a materialist or a naturalist. You don't believe in anything apart from where meat sacks kind of floating around. You probably don't believe in free will. You give it a 0.01% chance of 0.001% chance that reincarnation exists. However, you're open to proving some bitches wrong, so you go off to Peru. You're like, find me a fucking shaman. I've heard these shamans talk about reincarnation all the time. You go off with a few mates, and you find a shaman that's relatively untouched by humanity. You find a translator so you can speak to him. You're like, shaman, tell me about reincarnation. And he's like, well, what would you like to know? I don't know what Peruvian accent sounds like, so you got mine. What would you like to know? It's like one of those accents that isn't racist to do. And you're like, okay. What was my first life on this earth? And he's like, well, young man, I wouldn't get too cocky, because you're actually only on your third life of this earth, which makes you a very young soul. You were actually first born in the Ottoman Empire, and you are a mere shoe shiner. And that is why you have such shiny shoes all the time. You have an affinity, a very natural affinity towards them. You're like, I do have a natural affinity towards shoes, but I think he just picked that up from my shoes. I don't think he actually knows anything. So what's your now percent, if it was 0.001% chance, rationally, what's your percentage chance of reincarnation existing after this? Anyone? Exactly. Fucking the same. Unless he was like particularly persuasive, which he probably wasn't, translating so 0.0001. Now let's say you go off and you find a witch up a mountain, and you ask her, oh, wise old witch, I've heard some great things about your reincarnation stories. She's like, before you say anything, you're a shoe shine. And you're like, fucking what? What do you mean shoot? Tell me more. She's like, I know you're here, I can see it in your energy, I can see it in your face. You're a cocky dude, you're an arrogant atheist dude. So let me just tell you right now, your first life on this earth was shining shoes. And you're like, were you speaking to a shaman recently by any chance? Like, what? Like, don't know about that. So now, this seems pretty unlikely. So you're actually asking, all right, what was my second life? Because I asked the shaman this as well, and I'm not going to tell you what he said. She's like, Icelandic fisherman. You're like, fuck you. How did you know? How did you know? And so then you're set as an atheist and a rationalist with three different options. Firstly, coincidence. Seems pretty fucking unlikely. Pretty unlikely, so we can scratch that one basically off. Secondly, they're in cohorts. That's the one that I'm leaning towards because I'm an atheist, so I want to believe that. So these two are probably scamming me somehow, even though they have no incentive to do so. None of them are asking for money, and there's fucking no way they could talk. But I'm saying 99.9% that one. And then thirdly, there might be something to it. So, rationally, I would say we could probably start giving that 10%. 10%. If our presupposition was that we believe in a materialistic landscape, maybe 10% is a fair one. There might be something to it. We don't want to be too stuck to our guns. Now, you make friends with a person, they're your best friends, deeply know them, but you never tell them about this experience. In fact, you never tell anyone about this experience. But this friend, she gets very, very into spirituality. She goes off the deep end, takes some acid, you're like, oh fuck, I might have to stop being friends with Katie. Oh God. And then she tells you that I've got really into reincarnation. I've started exploring my past life. You're like, oh fuck, I actually went on this. Actually, before I say anything, what was my first life on this earth? And she goes into a deep meditation. She speaks to some fucking woo-woo spirit, and she comes back. And you trust this girl inside out to tell you the truth no matter what. She's never done anything to lie to you or trick you for 10 years of relationships and friendships. She says, I see you shining shoes in the Turkish Empire. And you're like, it's a bad history. It was the Ottoman Empire back then. So how did you know that? She's like, I saw it. I got a vision of you shining this man's shoes, and you loved shiny shoes, and that's why you have shiny shoes now. And then you're like, okay, what about my second life? And you're like, okay, I see you fishing. I see you fishing somewhere cold. Somewhere cold. I can't remember if I said Iceland. Somewhere cold. And this is something that is a type of evidence. And maybe your percentage can go up to, I mean, if you're a truly rational person, it has to go up to fucking like 80% now. Yeah, I have to. Maybe it's not reincarnation specifically, but maybe there's something intuitively they're picking up from your face. Maybe there's something that materialistic landscape cannot explain, because I can't think of a possible rationalization how this can happen. So this is what I call experiential data, empirical data. I didn't come up with the term actually. But this is something that, for me, really, really expanded the way that I view the world. I stopped looking for scientific literature to tell me how to do things. Not everything, so surgery would be great, you know, if you got a fucking surgeon, that'd be cool. But some things I've started to explore for myself. And I found out that there are people out there that when I sit next to them, I'm a baby. And there are people out there that when that person sits next to them, they're a baby. And the amount of knowledge and spiritual growth and power that these people have. And I've seen things that, in front of my eyes, things that completely go against the laws of, ostensibly go against the laws of Newtonian physics and the laws of materialistic landscape. I've seen it. Multiple things, sober, and I've had other people confirm it, and I've tested it, I've questioned it, again and again and again and again. So when people say, oh, there's no way we could ever know if there's a God, perhaps not. Perhaps you could start building up a worldview of what's around you based on how the world is structured. If there is a panpsychic universe, what does that tell us about the nature of consciousness? If we can learn that everything is conscious, what does that tell us about the nature of the universe? And then start experimenting and start questioning. And I think that it's something that is one of the biggest things that people would dig their heels in, and I don't care to change people's minds, but if you are curious about it, if anyone's curious about it, go out and fucking try it. Find a shaman. Find 3 shamans. Ask them some questions. I guarantee they know shit that you don't. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Well, when it comes to like manifestation and stuff, when like
deeper.
when like a negative manifestations like come into your mind, so say for example poker, like if you sort of like level yourself or get tilted, like how do you just give up that by just like tell them to go away, or do you have to
go away?
Do you have like some techniques to like stop like negative manifestations like emerging into your mind?
Yeah, I mean there's a bunch of techniques. So manifesting kind of means a specific thing of like thinking something and then bringing it through some mystical force throughout the universe, and I do believe in that. In fact, you'd be surprised how many top poker players believe that they can change the deck of cards in front of them by just believing that they're going to hit. You'd be amazed how many ostensibly like purely rational people just 100% believe in it, which is wild when I found that out. Actually, I had so many conversations recently with people that have started questioning it, and like, holy shit, is this actually a thing? And I'm not saying it's a thing, I'm not saying what I believe, but you know, it's worth looking into. Is luck just another skill? To get rid of the constant doubts, there are ways to do it in the moment, and there are ways to do it outside of the moment. So in the moment, breathing is probably your best friend. Like just fucking sending your energy down. If you've grounded that day, that's fucking great. Put your feet in some grass. Science is now telling us that's good, even though we knew it for millennia. There are lots of different meditations you can do, even if you take 3 minutes out and just sit out, maybe miss your blinds or whatever, but it can be worth it. Then outside of the table, what you can do is you can dig deep into your trauma. And everyone is traumatized. See it on your faces, and me included, and some people more so than others. And everyone has their unique flavors of how they've been traumatized and how they've been, how their mind has just been controlled by the societal pressures and by their parents and whatever. Dig deep into that, unravel it, learn to understand it, learn to understand your own tendencies, and then in the moment, when you see it come up, you'll be like, oh, it's this. And then you can put like 5% of your energy into that and keep your mind on the game. I'm hesitant of time. Is anyone? How many people are bored? Be honest. If you, good.
No, I'm not
Okay, I'll keep answering questions if people are down. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's your favourite and least favourite kind of famous poker player that you play with?
You asked me to bitch about something. Let me tell you a list of people I hate. Favorite famous poker player?
Yeah, so say like
the Negranis of the world. Okay, so personality, I get on loads with Patrick Antonius. You know, pretty good friends. I love Pat. He's deeply spiritual. You know.
Do you like his call? King Six,
I love it. We had such a fucking history throughout the last like 5, actually longer than that, because I've been in some private games with him, and we've been bluffing each other like left, right, and center. And I thought it was one of those spots where I thought that he would think I would never bluff and I'd go super thin, and he obviously thought that I thought that. And yeah, so I love it. I love it. And also Pat, he's a very like intuitive dude. Like, and he's the kind of empathetic intuitive. Like I was particularly good at live reads of like, oh, okay, your face is doing this, your nose is doing this, your hand is doing this, so it means this. You're looking in this way, it means this. He's naturally very good at just feeling. So like sitting next to him is kind of a bit scary when you're bluffing him, because sometimes he'll just get a feeling and be like, yeah, and he's right way more often than he's wrong. So yeah, I love it just because he probably just felt it from me. Least favorite? Oh man, I don't know if I should say. I'm not gonna name any specific names, but like and it's probably not people you'd expect. Like I don't know if people watched that. I had some beef with Doug who made that video about me. It hurt my heart so deeply. Not him. I actually really fucking love Doug. I try not to take things personally. There are a bunch of people in the high stakes community that from day 0 treated me like shit and treated other people like shit unless they were kind of in their clique. And some people that you would think on the surface look kind of nice, it's the kind of nice that as soon as something challenges their worldview, they turn into a monster that they have not tamed. So I tend not to like nice people, and I love kind people. I mean, I try to love everybody, but if I had to like distinguish people who haven't taken the time to find their true kindness and to tame their monsters, which is like a classic like Jungian concept, or Jordan Peterson speaks about it a lot. I think there's something inside of me that still I don't like the facade, you know, I don't like the inauthenticity.
You don't have to like give names, but what's like the biggest DJ thing you've seen?
I mean, Bryn, fucking, I don't know if you, so Bryn Kenny, he won the £1 million Triton for like tons. Oh, he came second actually, tons. His manifestation power, oh, it's so beautiful. He's so powerful. He's one of the people, again, like me, he never studied solvers, and he just has a few tricks up his sleeve, and his intuition is so powerful when he's on point, which isn't that often, but the amount of his bankroll that he put into that £1 million, and that he put into that £1 million buy-in was, I think it was like half a bankroll or something. But he said from day 1, I'm going to win this tournament, and he came second. That was pretty fucking deep.
If you were trying to like improve poker, how much would you play online compared to live?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the beginning, I'd play almost all online. What I always say to people when they're first starting out is play Zoom 2-0. Or if you can't afford it, play. Because Zoom, you get to see the most hands again and again and again. Cash game, Steve stack, like I said before, you get to see all the spots. You need to understand the theory and rationality of the game before you kind of expand. And live poker is so intimidating, it's so complicated, it's so difficult to like pick up all of these tells and then implement it into the game. You need to be able to think about ranges and range analyses in a way that it's not even thinking. It's like all of the best players in the world, you'll tell them a hand history, you'll be like MP versus MP, 3-bet versus whale, he opens 2.7x, we make it 10x pocket kings, boards 7-3 deuce. Everyone in their hand, every single one of the high stakes professionals, they'll hear that, they'll know what your perceived range is without even thinking about it. They'll know what your range is, or they'll have an idea about what your range is and perceived range is, and they'll have an idea about what his range is. They'll have an idea about how his range plays versus a quarter when you see bet, how his range plays a quarter pot bet, versus a continuation bet, how his range will play versus a half pot continuation bet. So you need to have millions of hands in your day, if not hundreds of thousands of hands at least, if you want to be a crusher, because your intuition, your autopilot will just pick up on stuff that you're not even aware of. So yeah, online for ages, and then if you want to take poker seriously, and then move to live, either when you need to start making money in your life, because it's a very personal decision, but as well when you feel like you've kind of mastered range analysis.
Where do you draw the line with ethics? Because I mean, obviously, when you win, someone loses, but also, especially in casinos and whatever, there are very personal problems. Like some people might be, gamblers, and other people might be alcoholics, that kind of thing. Where do you draw the line personally about using that either as like an advantage or actually playing into those issues that other people have, and like, how do you console yourself with the fact that, would you buy them drinks, or would you encourage them to get another round, or would you just sit to the left of them and wait for them to?
So I'm very, very much on the opposite of the kind of predatory behavior. Poker itself is integrally it's a predatory game, but there are elements to it like you described where you could buy people drinks. You could there was this one guy called Norman. I'll tell you a little story. One guy called Norman. I was sitting playing like a 5-10 in the Victoria Casino in London, the Vic, and we were sitting 9-handed. It's the maximum people you could get on the table, and in comes a 10th seat, and it's the first time I've ever seen this in my life. And I was like, "What's going on? Why is there a 10th seat sitting directly to my left?" And they were like, "It's Norman." I was like, "Who's Norman?" And they were like, "You'll see." And this guy is like 80 years old. He comes up. He doesn't come up like buying with a credit card. He comes in with a literal bag of money. A bag of money. And he sits down with like 25K, and I'm like, "Excuse me, what's that?" I get to the cashier. I get out 50K. And I sit down and I'm like, "Okay, let's fight." And I wanted to like create an egotistical environment, but also like a fun environment. I thought it was gonna be really fun. So that in that way, I do sometimes like try and get people, or like not aggravate, but like egotistically wanting to war me or competitive towards me if I think it's to my advantage. But the more and more I played with him, the more I just loved playing with him, and I didn't care about winning or losing, and he felt that. And he actually, after that day, we battled. I think he won a small against me, like a few K against me. But he invited me to a private game in Marbella, and it was me and 8 whales playing 100K. It was beautiful. We're playing 20 blinds of 25, 25, 50, 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600 with some blind raises to like 4K. And it was me and basically people that don't know how to play poker. I only won 60K, which sounds like a lot of money, but I mean, I punted off pretty hard at one point. But Norman had a bunch of regs following him around, left, right, and center. They would try and get in any game that they could. And he was sensitive to that. He knew what they were doing, and these recreationals, they know, like most of them know at least, like what's going on when somebody sits on their left, and it's kind of insulting, but they put up with it because they love gambling. But I never did that. I always say, "Norman, do you want to sit on my left?" He crushed me lifetime. He just absolutely annihilated me somehow, and I just absolutely loved it. And I was always seeing the person before I saw the amount of money before them. And I would much rather live life like that and try and like get the small edges. But it's a really difficult phenomenon to try and juggle. It's something I've thought about a lot, and I still struggle to articulate. Is like, how is poker ethical? You can make the greater good argument, which is a slippery slope. You're like, well, if I win loads of money, I can make a charity, which I have done, and I can slip. But like, you could say that about drug dealing. You could say that about mugging women. You could say that about so many other things. If you want to say, you're like, that's a fucking nice idea. Little corner sociopath there. And so I don't enjoy the slippery slope argument as pretty much with anything. But something in me tells me that playing poker is fine. I do trust my inner voice, and I could try and put it into words, like when people consent into playing these games and they're above a certain age and they're, not so mentally disabled that consent, whatever consent is, this like mythical thing that people can say that they're okay with doing. I think we have to respect their autonomy. I will tell people, like, it's only happened once, for like, bro, do you want to stop gambling? Like, it's just a lot of money to you, it seems like, and luck in the high stakes, you don't run into that so much. But it's a weird one. I would be surprised because I trust my intuition, but like on a rational level, I wouldn't be surprised if I run into some arguments of why poker is unethical that I wouldn't be able to combat.
What do you think of the level of skill and play style of lots of the Asian players from Macau and just China in general? In all the high skill
I think you know what you're asking. Asians love gambling, man. Oh man, there's nothing that I love hearing more than I'm all in. It's such a beautiful, like the Triton event has so many beautiful, I don't know whether like Malaysians or something or like billionaires. It's such a big part of their culture that I've heard it's like quite a big problem over there. But I mean, they're punty, man. They're punty. You don't get many good professionals that come from Asia as well. But I think because of the culture, it's either like you're a degenerate gambler or you're like definitely not gambling, or you're like hiding it from your family or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting how you say. I've not thought this before, but like play styles used to be very much a thing depending geographically where you're from. Like it used to be part of my online thought process. Where's this guy from? Okay, he's from like a Scandinavian country, cool kind of thing, or he's like German, so I'm fucked. And that kind of leveled out over time as online happened, in the same way that politics or economies kind of level out when globalization happens, that the same thing happens with poker. Like people start getting on the same wavelength, things eventually start to balance out more. I don't know if that's globalization, I imagine. But it seems like Asia's kind of got its own little pocket because you still don't see too many like super good Asian ranks coming up apart from like a very few of them. And then you still get all of these punters. So, and I hope that goes to show that I'm not scared about speaking about racial stereotypes, despite it being a terrible, terrifying time to speak about them. Because I do believe there's a lot of truth to it.
I just wanted to jump on the previous question about online and live.
Last question? Yeah. Last question. Make it good.
About the online and live question that you were saying, trying out, Zoom 2.0. What's your stance on, if you're like trying to learn, I guess, the fundamentals and stuff online, your stance on multi-tabling or single tabling?
Yeah, so it depends. I used to play 4 tables, and I thought that other people should play of Zoom, so that's like the equivalent of like, and if I was playing normal, I'd play up to 24 when I was growing up. I thought that other people should do that until I watched other people try and do that. And it turns out other people aren't so quick at thinking, a lot of other people. So you have to be really aware of how mindful you're being in every single decision you're making. So like a lot of people, if they're playing 1 table of Zoom, that's too much, so they have to like go down to a regular table because Zoom's like too quick for them. A lot of good professionals, they can play like 3 tables of Zoom, they'll probably, and that's probably the equivalent of 12 tables of normal. But you really have to pay attention to your own proclivities of how much am I thinking about these decisions. And especially when you're playing micro stakes and you're playing the low stakes, the big difference is, the huge difference is, are you winning those small pots? Anyone can cooler someone, anyone can have the best of it in a big pot because you have a tighter range pre or whatever it is. Anyone can make those sick hero calls. But the difference between an absolute crusher and a pretty good reg is how much you can destroy people in those small pots where people aren't really fighting for it, where people aren't emotionally invested in winning the 6 big blinds in the middle. And that, I actually said this, I think today on Twitter, or yesterday, it was, you can tell when somebody stops thinking about poker because their red line goes down, which is like the winnings without showdown. So like how much they're bluffing people, how much they're winning the pot without having to show their cards. And that is almost always, when it's a good player that has an uncharacteristic red line downswing, it's almost always because they've stopped thinking at the small pots. or because they stop laughing because they burst it out. But it's usually the stop thinking thing. So be really, really honest with yourself. Like, it doesn't mean you're stupid if you have to play one table. You might just have a really deep thought process that's kind of like slow and plodding, like Hannah. So where she, you know, if you put her in front of in front of a person or a social situation, she will be able to feel that situation twice as deep as I will. You know, I will pick up on loads of stuff, and then she'll be like, "Did you notice that?" I'm like, "Fuck me, that was no. Tell me more." And she'll give this like long, like fucking like 5-minute rant about how this person was interacting with that person and why they were doing it. I'm like, that makes so much sense now. I completely missed that person's a compulsive liar and that person's a sociopath and that person's whatever and whatever. So don't take it personally if you're the kind of person that can't think quickly, because it doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means that that's who you are. The end. I will say at the beginning I was super nervous, and I've kind of chilled out now, so thanks for the good energy. I appreciate it. It's the first time I've ever done a talk that is not in front of a computer, so I hope it's alright.
Is it fine if we get a picture of everyone?
Yeah, let's do it.